Hi everyone, it's Rachel back with the Shades of Orange, and today I want to do a top 10 list of my favorite horror novellas. Now this is my favorites as of the time recording this, so bear with me that if I were to redo this list, chances are I would rearrange some things, chances are I would move some titles on and off, but as of today, this is my rankings, and I also want to mention that I do exclude books that I just recently read, so books that are going to show up on my end of the year, best of the year videos, because I just don't like to spoil them. So this way I get to have some space between reading a book before I officially put it on a favorites list. And I really enjoy making these ranking videos, so I've done several of them before. So I'm going to have links to the videos or a playlist in the cards and description box. So if you want to check out more of my favorites, you can definitely do that. Otherwise, let's get into the list. Now first, at number 10, we have Rolling in the Deep by Mira Grant. This is a novella that follows a group that go off to film a mockumentary in the Marianas Trench. They want to film all about supposed mermaids. However, when they get there, they find out that those creatures may be real and terrible things ensue. The story goes from there. This is technically a prequel novella, but I felt comfortable to put it on the list because it does read like a standalone. The full-length novel is Into the Drowning Deep, which is also one of my favorite books. And so, surprise, surprise, I also love the novella. You can read this one first without spoiling anything. You really can read them in either order. This is a story of the crew that originally went to the Marianas Trench, and then the full-length novel follows the people that went to investigate and find out what happened to them. But basically, there's crazy mermaids out there. Mermaids are real and they are ferocious, and that's not a spoiler. You know that from the get-go. As always, I love that Mira Grant has fantastic diversity in her books, and the character work is fantastic, and this one was just a lot of fun. So if you like creature horror, if you like ocean-based horror, if you like sci-fi horror, this is going to be right up your alley. It's a good balance between a lot of action with some really good character development, and yeah, I absolutely love this one. Definitely earns a spot on this list. Next up, we have Mara by Richard Denny, and this is a novella that follows a young dancer who begins to hear voices telling her to do terrible things to the other dancers in her group. And I really like this one because I love psychological horror and possible possession stories, and this one is just really twisted. It definitely has some content warnings for self-harm, including eating disorders, and I really like how the author was not afraid to touch on some really difficult subject matter. And yeah, it's definitely a book that will make you uncomfortable, but if you don't know my reading taste by now, you'll know that I actually really like those stories that just kind of push the boundaries a little bit. I feel like this one is just an underhyped gem that I am constantly recommending and would really love more people to check out. So definitely among my favorites as well. Then at number 8, we have Sour Candy by Keelan Patrick Burke, and this follows a single man who is out of the grocery store where he sees a young boy having a terrible tantrum because they want candy and their parents are saying no. However, through circumstances, he ends up having that boy follow him home and tells him that he is now their child. And so this man has to deal with this boy, and this of course is a creepy child story. So the boy is not so sweet, and you get the consequences of that. You realize soon enough that he seems to be a boy out of time. He wears just very old, kind of old-timey clothing, and you start to wonder what is happening. And it's just a story that I like to recommend to anyone who is childless by choice because it will basically just reinforce your life decisions, and I find it very refreshing because there's a lot of horror stories about parents, but I don't feel like there's enough stories about those that choose not to procreate. And so if that sounds fun, if you enjoy creepy children in stories or just in real life perhaps, then you'll definitely want to check this one out. Then at number 7, we have Nothing But Blackened Teeth by Cassandra Khaw, and this follows a wedding party that rent an old Japanese mansion to celebrate the festivities. They go there early to drink and party, and perhaps there is also a spirit that is haunting this place, the spirit of a dead bride, and this spirit may want revenge. This is a very classic horror narrative where you have a group of friends that have complicated relationships. Some of them have dated in the past, some of them have secrets, and they don't all get along, and so you get the breakdown of the family dynamics, or rather the friend dynamics in this case, where they are just starting to fight amongst themselves, and then there is something possibly attacking them. And I found this book to just be really fun. It's a good balance between suspense and action, and I really like the Japanese setting because the author took a lot of time to include those cultural elements, those mythological elements, and it just made for a really solid read. So if you enjoy those things as much as I do, this is definitely one you will want to check out for yourself. Then at number 6, we have Goddess of Filth by V. Castro. This follows a group of Mexican-American teenagers that decide to have a seance. Right at the beginning of the story, something goes wrong, and one of them appears to become possessed. She starts crawling around the floor, she starts saying weird things and bleeding, and it's just very horrific. The start of this book is so memorable. And then the story actually follows the after events where they are trying to figure out what is happening with their friend. Was it just a freak accident? Was she pretending, or is she actually possessed? The story is told over a few perspectives, and it's a story that follows female friendship. It is fiercely feminist. It has some great commentary on a lot of cultural elements of being a young Mexican person living in the United States, as well as really playing with the possession genre and taking those tropes and twisting them around. If that sounds good to you, you should definitely check it out. It's obviously one of my favorites, and I just love so much about it, and I just think that these are just elements that I personally love to see in books, and am just, yeah, tickled pink by this book. Now at number 5, we have The Grown Up by Gillian Flynn, which follows a young woman who is working in a shop doing some adult business in the back. One day she gets hired by a woman to go investigate her house because she believes it's haunted. However, things are not what they appear to be, and I'm going to leave the synopsis there because this is a book you definitely do not want to be spoiled for. You want to know as little as possible going in. Gillian Flynn is one of my all-time favorite authors, so no surprise that her horror novella showed up on this list. And she just has a talent for writing really uncomfortable stories, really unexpected ones with dark twists and really good characters, and I just love this one so much. If anything, I just wish it was longer because I want to spend more time with Gillian Flynn and her dark prose. But if you have not yet read this one, what are you waiting for? Definitely go and pick it up for yourself. Then at number 4, we have Night of the Mannequins by Stephen Graham Jones. This follows a group of teenagers that decide to pull a prank that involves bringing a mannequin into a movie theater. Things go wrong, and needless to say, the friends start to die off. It looks like there may be a slasher on the loose, or possibly our main character is worried that this mannequin has come to life and is seeking revenge. Now, this is a book that I really like because I consider it to be so well written, so well plotted, and very smart. It's a book where the author is kind of letting the reader in on what is actually happening. It's not so much about having a big twist at the end. Instead, you'll kind of know what's going on, but you're going to enjoy every moment along the way. There were so many moments that just made me smile and smirk, and again, it's almost predictable, but it's meant to be, and I just think it is so well constructed, and I can't say more without giving away too much, but if you haven't checked this one out, I definitely recommend it. It's one of my favorite by this author and is well worth the hype. Then at number 3, we have Stirring the Sheets by Chad Lutzke. This follows an older man who has lost his wife. He is a widow. He is also a mortician. And so one day at his shop, he has a dead body come in of a woman that actually looks a lot like his wife. And he decides to take the body home. He then goes on to dress the body, to put on makeup and all of that, and really treat it as if this body was his wife. And from the synopsis, a lot of times people go in a particular direction. This is not body horror. This is not necrophilia. In fact, in a lot of ways, this book is almost not quite horror. Instead, it's very emotional. It deals with grief and love, and it's definitely one of the most emotionally impactful stories I have ever read. And so if you're intrigued by that, I highly recommend picking it up. It's not what it sounds like. It's just this beautiful story about love, and I really enjoyed it. It's definitely stuck with me over the years and is well worth anyone's time to read. Obviously, it's in my top 3, so you know it's really good. Then at number 2, we have Snapshot by Joe Hill. This is a story that follows a young boy boy who is a little bit of an inventor and a geek. It's set in the 1980s, and at the beginning of the story, he comes across a man who he believes is taking photographs of people. His neighbor warns him about this man, saying that when they take their picture, their memories disappear. And so this is a story that is partially a horror story, but it's also a coming-of-age narrative that deals very closely with family, because the main character is reflecting back on his childhood, the role of his babysitter, and how him and his father went along without his mother present in his life. It is, just like the last one, a story that really pulled on my heartstrings. I found it to be very emotional, very relatable, and very nostalgic, and just so well written. I did make a rule when I was creating this list that I only allowed one novella per author, and so I do enjoy quite a few of Joe Hill's novellas, but this is the one that really stood out for me and is certainly a favorite at the number 2 spot. And again, if you have not read it, highly recommend it. I personally like to do the audiobook version because it's narrated by Will Wheaton, who is one of my favorite narrators. So that's how I like to check it out. It's part of the Strange Weather collection. And finally, at the number 1 spot, I'm curious if anyone guessed it, but that of course is Come Closer by Sarah Gran. This is a story that's told in the first person perspective, telling a story of a woman who believes that she may possibly be possessed. She starts to hear things, she starts to have moments of blackouts and things that she can't quite explain. A book shows up in the mail that gives her the signs of being possessed, and slowly she starts to check more boxes as the story goes on. This is such a clever story. It is just written in such a smart way. I have reread it a few times now, and each time I get more out of the story. This book is very feminist. It has some really interesting commentary on being married and that relationship, and a lot of good commentary on mental health. I found it to be very reflective of things that I've gone through myself and really hit home. So if you like a story with that psychological aspect to it, this one does it so well. It handles mental health in a very nuanced way, and it is dark and disturbing and twisted and has a fantastic climax. I love how it ended. This book to me is just perfection, and if I redid this list in the future, I would be very surprised if any book is possibly going to knock it out of the number 1 spot, because I absolutely love it, highly recommend it, and would love to see everyone I know picking this up. So that is it. We've made it to the end of the video here. As always, I'd love to hear if you're planning on picking up any of the books I talked about, and I'd also love to hear what are your favorite horror novellas. If you don't want to do a top 10, just give me your top 3, and if I haven't read them, I will definitely check them out. If you, again, enjoy these top 10 ranking lists, make sure to check in the description box and cards, because I'll have some other ones linked there. And if you enjoyed this, please let me know. You can give it a thumbs up, drop a comment, and share it around online. If you're a new subscriber, hopefully you'll stick around. I do read a lot of horror, science fiction, fantasy, and thrillers. And otherwise, I will talk to you again soon. Thanks so much for watching. Okay, bye-bye.